Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Shelburne Museum. Thank you so much for coming today for this wonderful celebration of our new Pizzagalli Arts and Education building. It's so exciting to have you here. And as a museum guide, my name is Lee Dowling. As a museum guide, I can tell you that we're all extremely thrilled. And we know that many of you had a lot to do with this building being built and for us to be able to sit here today. And what we're doing in this first panel is asking you to ask the men responsible for building this building, sometimes with their bare hands, about the building itself, how the ideas, the design, the process of building. Many of us have watched it for a very long time now. And so it's going to be fun to get some inside knowledge about this beautiful Center for Art and Education. So I'm going to let the gentlemen of the panel introduce themselves. Then when you have a question, I'll come out into the audience. We are filming this. And I'll ask you to ask the question into the microphone, and then we'll turn, wait for an answer. And if there's a follow-up, we'll do that. Otherwise, I think it's going to be a lovely time. We have 1 hour to really talk about this building and this place in Shelburne. So thank you very much once again for coming, gentlemen, if you would.
Chip Stulen, I'm Director of Buildings here at the Shelburne Museum, and I was involved directly with the construction of this project.
My name is Jim Bowie. I'm with PC Construction. I was the project manager for the project. Worked directly with Chip every day, and Steve Gerrard from Beha Architects.
I'm Tom Denenberg, and I'm the director of this wonderful museum.
And I'm Steve Gerrard, and I'm with Beha Architects, and we're a firm out of Boston, and that we're a firm that specializes and works for institutions and for the arts. And I was the design lead and project manager for this project.
I'm Pat Haller. I work for Efficiency Vermont. I did not build this building, and I'll say I didn't have to do much work at all. I didn't need to do much critiquing. The energy efficiency of this building is phenomenal. So hats off to the crew here to my left.
Thank you, gentlemen. I just want to remind you, you have to speak into the microphones too because of the television cameras. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to open it up. Does anyone have a question? And when I come, can you give your first name and maybe the town you live in?
My first name is Rob, and I'm from Montpelier. And I'd like to know what features about this building you folks are proudest of.
Great question. Did you hear it? Yes?
Well, I am most proud of the fact that it's here and done and on time and on budget, and the community really came together. We raised a lot of money to affect this structure. But I think the fact that it is a simple building, the program is pretty pure. It's education and exhibition, and often structures like this end up with a lot of ancillary functions inside. So there's something really quite elegant about that. It's also a 360-degree building, which Steve can probably elaborate on. It presents a really monumental facade to Route 7, but a very demure side to the campus, which I think is a very tricky thing for a designer to do. So, and very well done. But that's what I'm proudest of, the way it sits on the land here.
Does everyone want to have a go at that?
Yeah, I can take a go at it. As Tom mentioned, this building is an incredibly efficient building. It has, there's almost no space that's wasted in this building, and that's something that was important to us right from the beginning, working with the museum, that this building really provide as much program space, but still be a building that had a relatively small scale, so that it fit into the campus. And the fact that the building does have a way of fitting into the campus, not overwhelming the buildings that are mostly of a domestic scale on the campus, is something that we're very proud of. But we are also proud of the fact that the building was supposed to be a building that made an impact when you drove down Route 7, and that it had also a real visual presence. And so it has that balance of being a building that has presence from Route 7, but also having kind of a domestic scale from the campus. And that's something that we're very proud of.
From a construction standpoint, what I'm proud of is the quality of the work. We at PC really try to choose our subcontractors really well, especially on projects like this that are this project is so important. So, you know, the stonework, the siding, even the drywall and the ceilings and the millwork in this building is really something I'm extremely proud of from PC.
And I have to say that one of the things that I'm most keen about are the materials. The natural materials from close at home here. We have wood for the floors and the galleries from the Bristol area. We have slate and stone from the Champlain area, and all of that coming together with the cedar siding really helps make this building perform, not just for now, but for many decades to come, to try to keep the maintenance costs as low as possible. I also am very much like the view lines that Steve has put into the building, where you're coming up to the building from the western side of the campus along the round barn. You see directly through it to a beautiful tree that's over on the eastern side. And as you come to the building from the south and you look north, you get some great view sheds straight through the building again, from the entrance area through this window here. So it's a real treat, and the treats keep coming.
Want to say anything?
Well, just because I live and breathe efficiency, I think I'm most proud of seeing the incredible lighting that we have in this building. It's often very hard to find such a great lighting design that is energy efficient. If you look in this space in the galleries, you'll see a lot of lighting, but that lighting was strategically chosen to provide the best lighting, but also for the most energy efficiency aspect of the lighting that's available on the market today. Things like the LEDs, they reduce the amount of energy that the light needs to use to produce the light that it's giving out, but it also reduces the amount of energy it puts out in wasted energy, and therefore the cooling system doesn't have to work as hard. So there are lots of little intricate things that the designers put into this and the builders put into it, that they did a spectacular job to make a building that's going to save many thousands of dollars a year. You don't get to see it because you see the skin. If you saw the guts of it, you'd be impressed, I think, as well.
Thanks, Patrick. Another question for our panel, or any one particular person in the panel? Hi.
Hello, my name's Michael, and I'm an architect. And so one of the things I'm curious is, you probably could have done this exact same building and had it all be completely rectilinear and right angles. So I'm curious where the subtle inflections came from and how they developed, hopefully with a reason as opposed to just, oh, I like that.
Okay, I'll handle that one.
Please, all yours, Steve.
And it's something that also is, it's a good thing that you noticed. There's a 15-degree angle in this building. You can sense that somewhere in the middle of the lobby, the building cranks. It begins to sort of bend. And that was very specifically done to create new lines of vistas and new ways of seeing the campus. And that inflection really was created especially for the porch, starting at the porch, so that the porch isn't looking directly north, but it has an inflection towards the views of the Thai and to the hills beyond. And then as you begin to move through the building, we studied this very much in 3 dimensions. So we used computer models to look at every single view, so that we began to realize that by making this crank, all the views to the campus and to the nearby landscapes were much more dynamic when you began to have this inflection. So it was really done to help to create new lines of vistas, a new way of seeing the landscape in the campus.
I like the fact that it reinforces the sort of the duality of the program, education and exhibition, the building torques in the middle. So not only does it take on a little bit of the contour of the hillside that way, as Steve mentioned, but it kind of doubles down that notion that there are 2 functions of the building, there are 2 wings of the building, and often you'll see classroom spaces in museums tend to be something of an afterthought in the plan. Museums in this country often date to the 1870s or 80s, and then the classrooms come in the 1950s or 60s, so they get squirreled away in basements or attics or new wings onto buildings. So the fact that this is uniquely symmetrical in that regard, we're sitting in an education space, but right across the way, equidistant from us is a gallery. I like the symbolism of that crank in the middle of the building as well.
I would say that there was a moment, because this particular view and this big window is something that was very carefully thought out. And there was a moment where we actually set up a little lift here so that the trustees could look from this view and feel that, okay, yes, the sighting is just right. And it was something that was very careful. We spent quite a bit of time sighting this building because there was many places where it could have gone. But that was a confirmation that this was that incredible view that they wanted to have for this moment, for these moments right now.
Thank you. And as we're listening to your answers, we're all looking out the window and admiring the view. So it's quite lovely. Does anyone else have a question for any of the gentlemen? Yes.
I'm Jerry from Burlington. How about some facts, the construction cost, the gross square foot, the net square foot, watts per square foot, any of those detailed informations you can give us?
It's about 17,000 square feet, give or take a few. Construction costs were just over $7.4 million for the building itself. The campaign was a $14 million campaign to include professional costs, a fairly dramatic infrastructure upgrade to the campus of a fiber optic network for each building on the campus, and an endowment to run the building. And about 3 Saturdays ago, we had a pretty amazing gift that put us over the top. So we actually raised to date about $14.8 million. So that really lets us launch the building in a very strong way. It gives us a fund for the exhibition programs moving forward. Other numbers, these guys know far better than I do. I was keeping track of the dollars every Tuesday morning.
I'm terrible at remembering some of the numbers, but the 17,000 is gross square feet. And I don't have the net square feet memorized, but my boss Ann asked me to calculate the net to gross ratio, and it was about 85%, which is extremely good for a building, net to gross ratio. And for per square foot cost, it worked out to be around $420 a square foot.
The galleries are about 2,500 per, and together that's 5,000 square feet. That's somewhat of something of an industry standard. If we were to take an exhibition from the Milwaukee Art Museum or something like that, it would be about a 5,000 square foot show, exhibition. So the fact that we can either use the galleries independently and have 2 smaller shows or 1 large one from another museum was important as well, as the museum, as Shelburne Museum begins to work into the national exhibition economy or ecology. So that was a very self-conscious number for the 5,000 square feet of exhibition space.
Chip, you look like you wanted to jump
Well, I
in.
was just going to say, I don't remember the number, but I think Pat can let us know what approximately the watts per square foot would be for the building.
I have a few stats.
All right.
So the watts per square foot, the state has an energy code that would require a building of this nature, and imagine there are different spaces, so different spaces require certain watts per square foot. On average, the blended watts per square foot is 0.88 watts per square foot. Code requires for a blended average about 1 watt per square foot. Just some more stats. 153,000 kilowatt hours saved per year, which is in the summertime about 11.4 kW. So if you think of a standard residential solar panel, that's at least 2 solar panels installs, which are 5 kW each. A solar panel, by the way, is installed about $30,000. So the savings is pretty appreciable. And I figured out after 153,000 kilowatt hours that is equivalent to about 20 photovoltaic panels being sited here at the gallery. The gallery LEDs, there's 240 of them, and they're 24 watts or 22, I can't remember exactly. They're 24 watts each. Typically you would install a 75 watt fixture, and that's equivalent to the efficiency of those are equivalent to about 6 solar panels themselves. I have a few more stats, but I'll wait for the questions.
Are there other things that you're interested in about the building and the construction of the building? The stone, I heard some people this morning ask about the stone. Where the stone comes from? Over there, over there.
The stone actually came from just below Lake George on the New York side. I forget the name of the town, right?
It's near Granville in New York, near that, in that area.
It's an ashlar granite stone. It's actually, believe it or not, something called rubble, but it's a very nice rubble.
Rubble?
Rubble.
It's like the ashlar granite is something that they basically mine out of the ground fairly easily, and they take the chunks of that and actually cull through it, and they come up with the sizes that you see out here. So it's not as expensive as you might think, but still fairly expensive for the stonework.
The
Masonry.
The masonry was done by North Star Masonry, and they did, I think, a phenomenal job. That was one aspect of the project, which I think every one of us, PC Construction and myself, we saw them working. We could just sort of sit back. We gave them some parameters. But once they got to work, they were hard at it, and they did a phenomenal amount of work with it. And every single stone has been hand cut and chiseled to be able to fit to its neighbor within the space. So and I think it works very well as it wraps from the outside to the inside in several areas, along with the cedar siding. It's a really nice treatment of the architectural design.
And one of the things that we did during the project is we did mock-ups for everything. And I don't know if you happen to drive by, there used to be a little yellow building here which we used as our office, but next to it was a mock-up. And that mock-up contained most aspects of the building envelope, which is the stone, the metal studs, all the air barriers and vapor barriers, insulation, roofing, copper. It actually looked like a little building out there in the front. But that was used for the architect and for the Pizzagallis and for many folks from the board to come out and actually see what they were getting ahead of time. And actually critique it and talk to our masons and make sure that they're taking into account everything, all the concerns of those folks.
And it looks like Vermont slate around, is this slate?
Shelburne slate, yes.
Shelburne slate. It's lovely. Other questions?
This might also, this is part of the LEED process as well, the location of the materials relative to the site. If someone wanted to mention that, but if you aren't shipping materials that far, that gives you.
That's right. And this is a project that is going for LEED certification, and we're going to see where we're at. We're aspiring to silver. And having a certain percentage of the materials for the project be local, that helps to reduce the cost and the carbon required to deliver things to the site. And it also helps the local economy too. So those are two things that LEED gives you points for.
Thank you. I know there's a question in the front row, and you had a question as well, correct? Eeny, meeny, miny, you're in the front row.
I have a question and a comment. First of all, well, I don't know which one to ask first, but I love this building because, and I was wondering if you had all thought of the galaxies, the cosmos, because the lines remind me of the stars. And I get the feeling of that lightness one might feel in a UFO, for instance, just imagining floating around the cosmos. And then my question is, what kind of woods are in the walls and ceilings?
Gentlemen?
Well, the siding is western red cedar, so that is not local. And we did, the columns out front are Doug fir. Those are not local either, but those were products that I believe the architect decided that, you know, the cleanness, finding this wood with no knots in it, and give it what Tom talked about, that elegant look is what they were looking for. Steve, you wanna-
Now, we did our best actually to find a local exterior wood, and we found that really the best wood for this particular application was the western red cedar and the Doug fir. But then the other woods, as you come into the building, the beech flooring you'll see in the galleries, that's very local, and the cherry that you'll see in the doors, which we felt was a hardwood that could complement the stained western red cedar. So some local wood and some wood from the West Coast.
Thank you.
And I think the millwork, the cabinetry is also local.
Yeah.
The cabinetry is also local. The floors in the galleries are local.
I wondered if you could speak a little bit about what makes this building different from any other building, in that it's a museum building, and I think I work at the museum, and one of the most interesting things to me about learning about this building is how there are so many unique aspects that are specifically built around having art in a building and things like that.
Thank you, Leslie.
Museum structures are unusual building types. They're, I sometimes say that they're closer to hospitals in terms of the climate that you keep inside and the HVAC systems. But museums nationally and internationally adhere to a standard climate and risk management profile for the structure. And what this lets you do is borrow objects or works of art from other institutions without having to keep special insurance on that. So the American Association of Museums, and there's an international body as well, that propose a standard facility report. And if everyone can hit those requirements, then you can borrow art from the Art Institute of Chicago or the Museum of Fine Arts Boston without sort of undue cost, if you will. And it had come to the point where Shelburne Museum's aspirations for its exhibition program, the shows that we've been doing in the last years, were bumping up into a caliber and category where we were borrowing objects from major institutions, but we weren't able to hit those requirements. This building does perfectly. 50% humidity, 70% temperature year-round, and the others can explain it in a little more detail. But your house, for example, is probably 12 or 15% humidity in the wintertime in Vermont. So this sets up a very unusual expectation on the structure in northern New England to keep that climate. But that was the AAM required facility report sort of standards that we were hitting with this building.
And I would point out that we design museums all over the country, but we knew this was unique in that you have some very harsh winter conditions. And as Tom mentioned, providing all that humidity, putting all that humidity into a building where it can get extremely cold is a challenging thing for a building to do. So you need to provide an extremely well-insulated building and a building that has a very good vapor barrier. So especially in the areas where the galleries are at, you have the walls are more than 2 feet thick at that point. And those walls are designed to keep that cold air out. But you also find that once you get into the lobby in this space, it's not the same mechanical system. So you're not going to have 50% relative humidity in this space because it wouldn't be comfortable. So this little building has multiple zones which provide very specific mechanical systems and environments. And one other thing I wanted to point out is kind of a neat little feature. When you go into the galleries, you'll notice that you don't see any mechanical louvers or vents or anything. What you'll find is all the return air is coming in actually in the baseboard. It slips in, the baseboard is set back a little bit, it slips in and brings that air through the wall. And all the air is being supplied through a 1-inch slot right where the wall hits the ceiling. And that does something special because it makes the wall into one plenum. And so the wall itself actually has air moving through it. And so that the paintings that sit on that wall will not get a microclimate behind them. So even the walls themselves have been designed very specifically to keep the temperature of the surface of the wall the same temperature as the inside of the wall. All things you don't see, it's all sort of hidden in the technology, but Jim and his guys very carefully built this to accomplish all those things in a way you don't see it in the end.
You also don't see the plywood behind the drywall inside the galleries. All the gallery walls are plywooded first, drywalled second. So they basically can hang anything they want, wherever they want on the walls of the gallery. So it's some interesting thing. The other thing about this building that you don't see is that this is an extremely stout building structure. I mean, the foundation, concrete, what really makes it a rigid, rugged building is this floor is an 8-inch thick structural slab. It isn't a typical office building that has metal deck, 4 or 5 inches of concrete for the floor. That's pretty standard for an office building. These floors are 8 inches thick, 2 layers of rebar, full mat, and extremely rugged building.
Steve undersold one moment when he said this was a well-insulated building. There was a moment in the winter time when it dipped down to about 25 degrees at night, and Jim's colleague, John Lavoie, had a little thermometer gun, little thermal reader, and he was just pointing it at different metal boxes in the room that had been in the building overnight, and they didn't go below 45 degrees. So there was a 20-degree difference just inside, outside, because of the, it's a hyper-insulated structure.
And this is with plastic in
Plastic
place
on the
of
windows,
glass
yeah.
for the windows. So.
And no heat.
Yeah, no heat on, so it was a pretty extraordinary just testimony to what 2 feet of insulation and airspace will do, yeah.
I never heard that.
Yeah, it's neat. He was just walking around shooting the toolboxes with this thing. It was 44 degrees.
Made it a nice place to work for the guys for the winter.
Getting back to the glass, I mean, that's something that we can't overlook either. It is very high-tech performance thermal pane glass that has allowed us to be able to have this expansive glass, and it was something that we definitely wanted to do with the design, and we were talking with the architects, is to take advantage of the views. But when we look at the expansive glass here, you wonder how we can be LEED certified or energy efficient, along with the energy used just to keep the galleries at a 50% humidity and a tight temperature control. So it is also another critical element of the structure, certainly.
One of the things I wanted to tell as I'm coming over here is when we guys sat down for the first time and we sat in here, you did some fancy things with buttons, and this room darkened beautifully so that we can watch film. So that I know is one of the things that is being planned for this building. This room can get quite dark very easily, and no one has to tug on blinds. It's all very discreetly done and quite lovely. So thank you for that. It's really exciting.
Hi, my name is Adam, and I got a question about the paint being used, more especially used in the exhibit space, because I know most places, not art museums or anything, they could open the building sooner than you guys wanted. Why? I know there was off-gassing. Can you talk about that?
Off-gassing.
Much less of an issue these days because we've taken most of the VOCs out of paint. But yeah, no, in the old days you used to, particularly in a museum context, you'd sort of paint the walls and let it off gas for a couple of weeks, but people don't require that as much anymore. And again, anyone who's tried to keep paint on the outside of their house knows we've taken a lot of the good stuff out of the paint over the years, so it's gotten pretty benign.
Will you be changing colors in the galleries all the time?
And that's one of the sort of beauties of these very flexible galleries, is they're just open boxes with a really wonderful lighting system and no interruptions for HVAC grills or grates. There are really only 2 cut lines at the top too, because of the HVAC gap at the top of the east and west walls. So the painters hate it when I say this, but it's actually a pretty easy place to paint. So each exhibition you can change the wall colors, you can move the temporary walls that Chip's crew has built around in the space, and it completely changes your experience in the gallery just by moving the temporary walls and the wall color. And we will do that probably every 12 weeks or so as we change exhibitions.
Thank you. There were a couple of hands on this side of the room. Young ladies.
I'm Hannah.
I'm Sydney.
We wondering how many people were working on this building.
This is Hannah and Sydney, and they want to know how many people were working on the building. Thank you, ladies.
Boy, I think at the peak, we may have had in the neighborhood of 60 or 70 men or people on the project at any one time. I think peaked out around 70, 75 people when it was really busy, and that included people out on the grounds as well as inside and on top of the building.
We would add a few from.
Well, from the design team, well, and Beha, we designed the building, but we work with a team of engineers. So we had one firm that was mechanical, electrical, fire protection, and plumbing. They're out of Connecticut, and we had so they probably had 2 or 3 people working on that. And then there were structural engineers or engineering ventures out of Burlington, which had another group of people. We also had civil engineers. We had a lighting designer. There's a landscape architect, which was Keith Wagner and Jeff Hodgson, here also from Burlington. And in our office, we had 2 principals and probably another 4 people working on it. So it's a big team. And design is something that's done by a whole group of people. So there's a lot of input from a whole group of people, and that's what makes good buildings. Actually, it's not something that like one person does. It's really a whole kind of team effort.
Thank you. Other questions? Back here. Sir.
I'm Alan from Virgins. I forget the name of these chairs. Is it 30/3 or 40/4?
40/4. And there's even a little story to those chairs. Those chairs were designed in the 60s, and they're in MoMA's design collection. So we wanted them because we thought that they were referential to the somewhat 60s modern feel of the building. And then when we called, we were told they were unavailable. And so Chip and I and our furniture rep, we all beseeched
We called again.
the company. We called again. And I actually ended up with the company president of this firm in Illinois that made them. And they had sold the patent. So the next version of these that you see are made offshore. These are the last American-made versions of this chair. And we think this is the last, 140 of them that
I think
we
so
were
too.
able to get.
I think so too. Yeah.
But it's a very, thank you for picking up on that. It's a very elegant chair, and it's been in use in universities and institutions for years and years.
The 40/4 stands for that you can stack 40 of them high, and they only take up 4 square feet.
It's designed by a man named Dave Rowland in the 60s. And was immediately put in MoMA's design collection as a very clever.
And comfortable.
Yeah.
Other questions? Yes.
Do you plan to have any musical activities in here? And what did you do to achieve your acoustical goals? Or what did you think about the acoustics?
Short answer is yes to the first part, but I'll let you.
Yeah, I think you've got things planned right about
Yeah.
In this space, it's basically a balance of some absorption and some reflection. You don't want it to be completely absorptive and completely reflective. You can see the things that absorb in this space are the ceiling, and these white panels up there are completely absorptive. They look like plaster, but they're not. And then the carpeting has some absorption. And then the rest of the walls are meant to be reflective. So it's about that balance. And I will be actually very curious to hear how music sounds in this space.
So far, very well. We've been testing the PA system. Those of you who've come to lectures or other events at the museum know that this is a game changer for us to have this space. The ability to show films, the ability to have lectures, to pull the screen down behind us. So this is an immense upgrade for our institution, and we're just thrilled by it.
Thank you. I'm wondering about the process of deciding what type of design to put at Shelburne Museum. A large barn, a mansion, a box, this. How did you get from the planning stages to this building?
But I came in halfway through, and took over for Stefan Yost, who did a beautiful job early on organizing the program of the building, and with Chip and Steve and others. I will say, though, that one of the things that attracted me to come here in this project was that this is a building of this moment. I had spent the early part of my career teaching historic preservation, and I was quite comfortable with the buildings we have on this campus, but I really do think that an institution in the 21st century, it needed to be a building of this moment. To build a barn or something that was so contextual would have competed with the historic structures and ultimately probably failed in comparison to those buildings. So, but I'm also very aware that the scale of this building is literally lifted from some of our historic structures. So it's, in that regard, the DNA of the building is very much of Shelburne.
Yes, and I would say that finding the right voice for this building is something that we spent quite a bit of time with. It took many iterations and work with the trustees and work in-house to find the right architecture. And we looked at different ways of articulating this building. We looked at many different roof forms. We pushed the building in a more historicist way at one point, and pushed that design, and then looked at it in different ways. And essentially, we used a lot of iteration to find the building that would fit the best. And I think it was when we determined that this idea of having a flat roof that has extended eaves, and the way that these eaves begin to sort of pick up on the horizon and the horizontality of this open site, began to have the right feel for this, and kind of began to relate it to the landscape. And as Tom mentioned, the materials were something we always knew was going to be a connection. We knew that there was a very rich palette of natural materials on this campus, and by incorporating the materials, used in a contemporary way, we could find a way for the texture of the building to relate to its neighbors. And we were very pleased. I think we always wanted to have the building be of a more contemporary vocabulary. We agreed with Tom that the building should be a building of today. But to find just the right way of articulating that is something that took a lot of time and a lot of thinking.
Other questions? Sir?
How will you handle snow removal on a flat building?
That would be chip and a shovel.
I'll be very interested to see what happens with the snow around the eaves of the second level. As we see what happens with it on the Ticonderoga, for example. By and large, the flat areas, if they're not impeded, it blows right off. And we don't have to do too much with it. But once again, we're going to be seeing some very interesting cornices coming off of this roof, where the snow blows off the roof and then curls down over the edge. I'm sure of that. I'm not concerned about weight load, unless we've got 3-foot snowfall and then 2 inches of rain on top of it. Then we'll be up there shoveling that snow off. But I don't expect to be doing that unless that condition arises.
Thank you. I was curious about that too, so thanks for asking.
Yeah,
Yes.
I would say that the snow's not going to melt off this building. The insulation is that good.
On the way in here, they were saying to us that they're renting it out for like weddings, that type of thing. And the thought occurs to me, are these windows unbreakable so that if they get rambunctious, they can't stumble through it or fall through it?
They won't get that rambunctious.
I think you can trust that answer.
Just, by code, any glass that comes down to the ground needs to be tempered. So it is tempered glass. It's like that glass you have in your windshield that breaks into all the little small pieces if it breaks. Yes, all of this lower level glass is tempered.
So that means different kinds of glass as we go up?
Yeah.
Yes?
So yeah, this is tempered. That's not.
Nice. Other questions? We still have about 20 minutes talking about the building, the structure of the building.
May I make a
You
note?
want to
Just
jump
so
in?
earlier it's talked about the VOCs of the paint. Earlier we said something about the lighting and that there's a little bit of a seamlessness of controlling the lighting And you can have this room be a dark room. Several of the galleries have clear story lighting, day lighting, but then that can be shaded automatically. But also as we sit in this room, the ventilation system is ramping up and down depending upon how many people are in the room, and it can tell that through how much carbon dioxide levels are in the room. So there's a lot of energy efficiency and control strategies that are employed in this building, and I just thought that the VOC comment was good, but also the carbon dioxide levels in here, we're gonna all stay awake because the ventilation system is responding to the number of people in this room.
Really, really very interesting state-of-the-art stuff. Here.
Hi, my name is Carol. I spent a couple hours in the building this morning, very much focused on the artwork, and then used the elevator and the restrooms, and that's when I started to notice the detail work in the building. In particular, I loved the glass reflective ceiling on the ceiling of the elevator. I just think that's really fun and really cool. Really enjoyed it, and I'd probably run up and down a few times more on the elevator.
Thank you, and for those who haven't run on the elevator yet, it's over there. So when you leave the room, head to your left, you can take the elevator down. Excellent comments about this gentleman, because these are the details that people notice that are so special. It's like when you go to Disney World and you notice, we have marble bathrooms. I guess that's what my money paid for. So here we have some really nice facilities for basic things.
And I think the details, what are particularly striking about them is that they are simple and elegant. There's a simplicity in the design and in the lines of the details that make everything come together nicely. That's what I think is, is one thing that you could look throughout the building, and it's whether you look at where the siding comes to a corner and there's a thin metal strip going up the corner that kind of ties those two pieces of wood together, but it gives that corner strength. Not only is it visually pleasing, but it also allows that corner to have great strength and resist bumping and scraping. So it adds some integrity to it as well.
Other questions about the building, the process of design or building this wonderful structure?
Hello, my name is JD Langdon. Sorry for coming in late, but this is absolutely fascinating, and if this is a repeat, I apologize. Can you talk about the lighting and the infinite possibilities? I've been sort of playing with these, playing with the idea of getting the new Philips Hue lights, so I can, the total spectrum of light and white lights and whatever you'd like at whatever level at incredible efficiency.
I might just very broadly say that Shelburne has led the conversation nationally in museums with LED lighting for a number of years, but it was mostly a question of how we retrofit or adapt lighting into our historic structures. Chip's crew and our conservator Rick Kirshner have been very important in consulting with other historic sites. And Rick is in the back here, I think, or was earlier. In terms of gallery lighting, it's really only been in the last couple of years that museums have gotten serious about employing LED lighting in a gallery context, mostly because we didn't really like the color balance available, and that has dramatically improved. And then even more recently, when we started doing some A/B testing as late as this winter time, there was a new generation of bulbs from a different manufacturer that we really preferred, and the color shift doesn't happen for tens of thousands of hours later than it used to. Again, it's a major improvement. It doesn't tax the HVAC system because it isn't kicking off as much heat, but it's also become really quite not just pleasing and not just acceptable, but sort of an industry standard. So major museums are all now converting to LED lighting, the Smithsonian and others. So it's really come of age, and we've sort of rode that crest a little bit. There's also if you look up when you go into the galleries, you'll notice a pretty dense grid on the ceiling for lighting, and that's something that I'm very, very keen on. Shelburne's collection is very heterogeneous. We have a lot of sculpture, we have a lot of decorative arts, So the ability to put multiple lamps on an object in the room to sort of light from different angles is something that we're quite keen on. When you're even presenting something as easy as a painting show, sometimes you have 3 lamps on a particular painting. You might wash the wall, you might spot a part of the painting, you might wash the painting. So if you have 40 or 50 paintings in that gallery, that could be 150 heads, 150 lamps or lights from the ceiling. Rarely gets that far, or that many, but it's really kind of a wonderful moment to be in this business because the technology has really caught up with the function.
On the color shift, the curator, Rick Kirshner, he's the one that sort of reminded me that these fixtures, the LEDs, they last for years. And we're used to having fluorescence or incandescence especially being thrown out pretty shortly. So color shift over time obviously is an important thing for the LEDs. You want the high quality LEDs to not color shift within their lifetime. And so it took a lot of research from those here at the museum to find such an item. I would say that the color shifting, I think it's on the order of somewhere around 8 years or more that these will hold their color rendering as they do today. The same light fixture, the same bulb is going to be lighting the same way in 8 years. That's a big deal.
Thank you. This is the Pizzagalli Center for Art and Education, and we've talked a lot about the art galleries, but what about the education portion right below us, the classroom? What makes it different from a classroom, an art classroom in a high school or a middle school? Why is it special here?
Well, internally we've been joking a little bit that as of this moment this is the most up-to-date structure in America, and then next week someone will open their building. The classroom to me is really the heart of the building. I think that the highest and best use of a museum in this country right now is for educational purposes and for engendering creative thinking in young people moving forward. And the classroom downstairs, if you all haven't been in it, please do go take a look. It's beautiful. So I think as we are moving into an era where, frankly, over half of the public schools in this country have lined art education out of their budgets. Putting that emphasis and creating a beautiful space was very important. It is fully wired, so when I mentioned that fiber optic infrastructure network before, it's got a smart board and a projector on the wall, so a teacher could come in from a district anywhere and have a moment in our classroom, and then that could be in real time, a remote classroom back wherever the district is, the school is. So the fact that we have connectivity in such a robust way right now is extraordinary. But it's also, again, to my mind, the fact that the building is designed with a kind of a dual program of education and exhibition, and the classroom is as important as the galleries. To me, I think that's really emphasizing that Shelburne Museum is doubling down on its role as an educational institution in Vermont. And again, Vermont does fairly well with arts education, but nationally this is something that the country has to reckon with in the next couple of years.
I know that as a guide, we, at the beginning and the end of our year here, when we're busy or tired or brand new, that's when the kids have been coming in from the schools, and just hundreds of kids every day, and they'll inundate the museum. A lot of teachers are really great about teaching about the Ticonderoga or something else in the classroom prior to coming here. It's going to be nice to be able to have students here all year round, so it's not that mad dash at the beginning and the end of the year, but throughout the year we'll be able to have children and their teachers in the class and integrate that into the classroom as well. But I wanted to talk, I saw a hand back here, I wanted to ask about, I know big people are going to be down there working too, because I saw that the tables and the chairs move up and down.
They do, and we're at also something of an unprecedented moment in history, which is, I've forgotten the number of baby boomers that are retiring every day. And there's something quite interesting about that generation, which is they are extremely peripatetic. They travel, and they are quite interested in authentic experiences. So this is, one reason why we, in Vermont, we're known as a foodie destination, a foodie culture. People literally go and consume their passions and their interests. And passion-based learning, lifelong learning, is something that is absolutely on the rise in this country. So it is beginning to replace a more passive sort of economy of tourism that we've seen in New England, that people want to go and have experiences that they can only have at that one location. So that's something that this building is also engineered for.
That's really exciting. Plus, there's a kitchen. I'm
Yeah.
just saying, right behind that wall. Someone had a hand up. Sir.
My name is Roger. I wondered if this education building qualifies the museum for more money from foundations from around the country.
I certainly hope so. It's the sort of the Gordian knot, or the conundrum, which is right now we have about 100,000 visitors a year. We expect in 3 years to have about 120, 125,000. We would like to see that over the next 5 years or so get to 140, 150,000. The audiences that will be, vastly making up that delta or that increase, a large percentage of them are school children, and they are not paying visitors. So what they are, to be crude, are it's a development opportunity. It is an opportunity for foundations to
They're
subsidize.
ambassadors.
They're ambassadors, exactly. So it does make the museum attractive for foundation support in that regard. And there are foundations that are specifically geared for education. Everything we know about education these days is pushing experiences, at a younger age. Right now, we're having a great conversation going on nationally about, pre-K education. We used to have interns when they were in college. Now we have them in high school. Everything is getting younger and younger. The faster we get younger people into their sort of institutional experiences like this, the better we know they are.
Thank you. We have about 5 more minutes. I want to give all the gentlemen a little bit of time to wrap up, tell us something that we might not have asked about. But is there one last question before we go to this final portion? Okay, so what I'd like you all to do, if you have something you want to brag about or talk about and we haven't asked about it, would you take this last 5 minutes and say a few words? Patrick, you want to start? Is there anything that we haven't talked about?
Boy, to brag about, I just enjoyed coming into this building when it was complete, or near complete, and working with those at the museum. Again, the insulation, the air sealing, the mechanical systems, and the lighting systems have been phenomenal. I didn't need to do much work whatsoever. Most of it was, frankly, all of it was, congratulations, you're building a great building. And they did hire 2, it's unusual, if you can imagine, when you build a building, to not have someone check to make sure that all the mechanical systems are correct and operating the way they ought to, and also to look at the shell and make sure that the shell is well insulated and air sealed. Well, the Shelburne Museum took the extra step, which is uncommon, to have someone to actually watch over the insulation contractors and do air sealing and blower door testing of the building. And then they also, which is unusual, hired a commissioning engineer to come and make sure that all of the mechanical systems are operating as designed. And it's unbelievable, you may think, but that is not common for the mechanical systems to be operating correctly when the building is done.
Thank you. Jim. Jim Bowie from the, oh wait, I'm looking at Steve and I'm saying Jim, sorry.
That's okay.
Steve.
Well, I would just say that, this project, we've been working on it for over 4 years, and it's been a long process, a lot of thought, a lot of people involved who've had so much to incorporate into the project. And through the whole process, seeing models and drawings and then seeing it built, But for me, today was the first time I came in here and I saw the artwork in the building and how it was curated. And that's where to me, it really came together. It began to sing for the first time because it was meant to be a building for the arts, and until it had the arts in it, it was just kind of an empty vessel. And then also seeing this space with people in it. So this is the thing that's made me the most excited today, is to see the building being used the way it was designed for.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephen. It's a beautiful building. Thank you to Ann Beha, architects out of Boston, for designing this for us. Jim Bowie from PC Construction. Anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, this building is designed to have great experiences for the people that come here. And I can just, I wanted to say what a great experience it was building it. We had a great time doing this building. I don't think I've had so much fun doing the construction project. Steve's been great, and Beha's been great, Chip's been great. It's just been an absolute joy to come to work here. So.
That's nice to hear. Thank you. I don't know why I'm taking pride in that answer, but I am.
Great people to work with here.
Shelburne Museum. It's a wonderful family. It
phenomenal
is.
people to work with here.
Thank you. Chip Stulen, the important person on campus.
Oh, I just can't say anything other than reiterating what Jim just said. The collaboration on this project, from the architects to the engineers to the folks in the field building the building and those overlooking that, the whole process could have been a real drag if there were lousy people involved. And we didn't have lousy people involved. We had everybody that was invested in what we ended up with. And I think that shows as you look around. There's pride in the workmanship within this building. There's pride within the design team and in the team that worked on the mechanicals and the electrical portions of it. And there certainly is pride in those that oversaw that whole work, PC Construction. So I think that's the thing that I take most from this moment right now.
Thanks, Chip. And lastly, Tom Denenberg, the director of the museum.
Okay. It struck me that those two young women who were here before, and they asked how many people worked on it. And 125, 150 people worked on this, and no tears. It was pretty amazing from start to finish for a project. But there's something kind of hard to define or ineffable about Shelburne Museum, and I noticed this a year or more ago when I began to just notice this little nuance in people's way of describing this institution. You go elsewhere in another city, people always refer to a great museum. The Clark in Williamstown is a great museum. The Art Institute of Chicago is a great museum. The Boston Museum of Fine Arts is a great museum. But people always say, "Oh, I love Shelburne Museum." So not only are we a great museum, but we are a beloved museum. And I think to be a beloved museum and to sort of take that attitude and build a new building for the community, it's kind of a beloved project, which is what these guys and so many others have done such a great job bringing to fruition.
Well, thanks, Tom, for that. I know Electra Havemeyer-Webb had the vision long ago now. She died in 1960. So before that, she envisioned a building that would do exactly what this one is doing. And I think she arranged the fine weather and all the things that went right over the last few months.
And yesterday was her birthday.
And yesterday was her birthday. So, yay, thank you, Electra, for this. And as a guide, I think it's just a marvelous, marvelous job and a wonderful place to work, a real family, a real sense of community here. It's very special. And I know I'm going to put this down so I can applaud all of you for what you've done, and I know everyone would like to applaud and say thank you, but at 4 o'clock we're having another panel. So if you're the academic type who like to sit in classrooms and listen, we're going to be talking more about the vision for the museum, the education department, and later on about how we're going to put exhibits into this space and throughout the museum. So hopefully you'll come back for that. Okay, so it's applause time. Let's say thank you to these guys. Thank you all for coming. There's plenty going on out there, so I hope you'll go out and play some more. Eat, drink, and be merry.